Welcome to Season 2 of the UX Coach podcast. This time around, we are expanding on our exploration into careers in digital design and user research to look into the challenges encountered by hiring managers and those new to the industry wanting to make good progress. In this episode, I'm in conversation with Vanessa Colina. Vanessa is founder of UX Backstage, a series of online courses for designers that aim to help develop the necessary skills to find your next job. Vanessa has some great advice for hiring managers of all kinds about what they can be doing to improve the quality of the candidates they attract and being honest about what they need. We also talked about how UX Backstage launched in order to support designers looking to move out of junior or mid-weight positions into organisations that will help you develop skills and spaces for the future. Here's Vanessa to tell us more.
My name is Vanessa Colina, and I have a background in graphic design, actually. I went to school for graphic design in 2004. And after getting my degree, I started working in the design industry and started testing all of the different types of design that I could execute. And that's how I got to digital design, and I fell in love with back then with websites, then with mobile applications, and finally with user experience design. Once I realized that having the perspective and the user included in the process was the way to go. So I've been doing that for the past 10 years, and right now I'm in a team where we explore new concepts in technology, and I'm the one always bringing the user to the center, co-creating with them, testing new concepts. What you would say is that I'm in that early stage when you are creating a product, and testing new concepts to see if that's something that the user needs and it's aligned with their needs.
Right. So it sounds like a little bit of classic sort of UX discovery work, but also possibly a bit more in a sort of innovation space where you're pushing what is possible and what can be achieved.
Definitely in the innovation space where we are creating something new. We are disrupting other products. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I just went to a conference, the Lean Startup Conference, and many of the things that the teams do that attend that type of conference, they are called innovation teams. So it's very aligned with that type of activities, because we tackle the introduction of products. So all of these products that have a high risk within the organization and a highest degree of uncertainty.
It sounds like a pretty good space to be in. So I'm really interested to know about your involvement with the Envision Design Leadership Forum and how that then relates to UX Backstage.
Sure.
I noticed that you were talking about in the Designer Hangout Slack channels.
Sure. So I joined the Design Leadership Forum, I think 2 years ago. Now I think it was when they started the forum, and it's a really good forum in terms of leadership, because there is a really strong community. It's a Slack channel and a series of events that is organized by Envision, where we touch on a lot of the challenges around leadership, around managing a team, or establishing the user experience practice in all kinds of companies, small, medium, large. And out of that group, I was able to validate a few of the challenges that I've been going through as well. So it's more like a support group, I would say, and a very, very engaged support group when it comes to leadership and the challenges around that. Apart from that, at the end of last year, I started this project called UX Backstage. I was originally about to start working on a product for us designers, and before doing that, of course, I applied the same methods to myself as well. And I said I have to go and talk to people and see if this is a shared frustration and it's not me that I want that I need this in my life. So after talking to a lot of designers and then started talking to hiring managers, I realized that one of the main frustrations that we have now in our space is the hiring space, right? And I see that as actually a good thing, because we are in this position where there's a lot of demand for user experience now. It used to not be that way. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, the demand. You would say it was average, but now you see all of these positions being open in all sorts of companies. Companies are realizing that design is a competitive advantage. The only thing that I've noticed is that they know they need it, but then they don't know what to do with UX once they have it inside the company. So the only exposure that people in companies have had to design most of the time is actually visual design. So that's the expectation that they have when someone from user experience enters the company. And also, since they are trying to establish their teams, the UX team, they are looking for people already with experience as a UX designer. So 2 or 3 or 4 years of experience, and they are looking also for people in leadership positions. So the person that is going to build their team, that is going to lead the building of the design capability within the company. So that leaves us in this cycle where we are in companies that maybe don't understand what we do, and maybe they're not ready to grow their design capabilities. And then we want to go into a job that maybe is going to give us more opportunities to grow as a designer. But then the next job is looking for someone that already has a few years of experience. So there's this gap in the hiring space that I've identified in the past year, where with one of the courses that we are doing with UX Backstage is to help designers assess a set of companies that maybe are already invested in growing their UX team and grow and moving to the next level in the UX maturity. Help them get into these companies, help them assess the company, help them articulate their design decisions, help them present themselves in a way that it's an opportunity for the company, regardless of the experience that they might have. If they have, if they don't have enough, or if they have enough, but they don't know how to position their experience. And the idea at the end with the project is to get more companies into a higher UX maturity level. I think that that's gonna get us into a more fulfilling job. One that can impact the products and the services of the companies. I don't know if this happens to you, but me as a designer, every time that I use a product that is not aligned with what I need, that is a frustration to use, I'm like, we can do better. Like, there's a team, I'm sure there's a design team within this company that needs to have a say into decisions, that needs to have more influence to be able to make this product better. So I think that at the end, by helping us get into these companies and have more influence, at the end, the products of these companies are going to be better. So we're gonna be happier in our job, but also we're gonna have better products as consumers.
Wow, there's so much to kind of unpack in that. There's a couple of things that I'd like to sort of dig into a little bit deeper. One of them was the course that you're about to launch towards the end of this year in 2019, 2020. In a way, it's a bit like a dating app, right? It's like trying to help designers look for the red flags in job ads to be able to know what kind of organization that they're walking into. What other skills and mindsets are you helping develop there as part of that?
That's funny that you mentioned mindset, because that's the program, which is a 4-week program. This first program is going to be more like a mentorship, because I'm going to be there 100% of the time. It's a group of sessions where it's more like a one-on-one relationship, where I work with the student, and then we have a few sessions which is with the whole group to be able to leverage everyone's experience. And more than looking for red flags, which we are going to do in the program, is to teach the students how to assess these companies by themselves once the program is over. Because as you know, finding a job, and especially the job that you really want in UX, is not something that you accomplish in 4 weeks. So the main thing that I want students to get from this course is to have confidence in the companies that they are choosing to apply to. One thing that is happening too is that since there are so many opportunities now, so many UX positions open, you have then UX designers applying to 10, 15. Like yesterday, I talked to someone that applied to 50 in the past 3 months. And that takes time. That is really time consuming and is tiring. But also it dilutes the effort of applying to the company. So you're not really tailoring your expertise to a given company. And this is something that the main thing that hiring managers mentioned when I talked to them. They said, I would like a candidate that tailors their application to what I need, to the product of the company, to the industry. Of course, I also mentioned that if the job description is very generic, it's really difficult to tailor that application. But so looking for red flags, but also understanding the company, what's the business model of the company, what would design bring to that company. There are many companies that maybe design is not the strategic advantage. So for that at the moment, you're gonna get a little bit of pushback when you get into these companies. So and there are pros and cons with this type of companies, because you are able to grow as a leader if you get into these companies and you are able to overcome these obstacles. But that's something that I really want people to get clear on. Like if you're looking to develop your leadership skill, that's a great opportunity to enter these kinds of companies. If you're looking to grow as a UX designer and practice more of your craft and learn from someone that has more experience than you, then going into a company with a higher maturity, it's a better option for you. So that's why I say that for this one, I think it's going to be more like a mentorship, because it's about thinking about what's the goal of each participant, and then looking for companies that are going to advance that goal.
What do you see as being the main challenges for people in hiring management positions? Because it sounds like you're looking at two quite different camps. You've got one which is you have an organization which has already got an established design infrastructure, and there's leadership there. They're looking for something, and I'm guessing it's very different to the organizations that have low maturity, but you're saying provides a different opportunity for a designer to be able to go into that and actually make a stamp on that product, the service, or whatever it is they do.
You mean the hiring managers?
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely there's a difference, and this is simplification of the envisioned this UX maturity model, where you have the low and the mid maturity, and then the highest, which is only 5% of the company survey. The main thing that I see with hiring managers, especially in terms of their maturity, is that in low maturity companies, their hiring manager might not be someone with a design background, might be someone that is coming from the marketing department, or maybe even the engineering department. It's coming from someone that is maybe doesn't have the best understanding of what user experience is coming into the company to do. So that's in the low maturity companies. This is a real problem, because the hiring process across the application is very normally geared towards visual design. So that's the expectation that they have, because there's many times you are the first hire or the second hire, and in a company that even the bigger the company, the the bigger the challenge to then change minds and explain what's the value that you're bringing to the company. And with the mid-level maturity, then you in these companies you might already have a team, someone in leadership in these teams. That person might be the hiring manager. That person might be the one that they hire to build a team, because that's something that is happening a lot. Once the company sees that they need someone with enough understanding of UX to hire, then they hire the lead or the head of the design, and then this person builds the team. So that's why I'm focusing on helping designers get into this type of company, because it's being in the mid-level, everything is not established yet. The team is establishing the process and the design, which I'm sure you know it's different. We have this framework that we start with in companies, but everything needs to be adapted to the product of the company and the organization and the culture of the company. So it's a really good space if you want to learn your craft, but also you want to learn leadership as well, to get into this mid-level. But I would say that's a difference. When you go into a low design maturity company, you might not even be talking to someone with design knowledge or background. Mid-level, yes. And I mean, the highest, I talked to someone that applied for the course, and she was like, I want to get into Airbnb or Apple or these companies which are in the highest level. And I'm like, for those kind of companies, I mean, we know they are design led. Like, we know that design is in the highest levels of influence. So for those type of applications, a different set of skills is needed. Like, you have these long applications, and you get into design exercises, and you get into 3 or 4 interviews, and that's a different set of skills that you need to be able to, because there's a lot of demand for these companies. There's a lot of designers trying to get in, and just a few spots.
Yeah, this is a big challenge. Like you say, there's actually a lot of jobs out there internationally. We've got a very saturated market. It's all at a particular end of it. What I'm wondering about is trying to support people to chase that top 5% is setting up for an incredibly high failure rate for what is essentially an assumption that it's a better experience than somewhere else, because you have people there that will theoretically nurture and develop your career, but you'll also be put into a mindset which is very much of a big corporate organization. Is there a risk of someone following that potentially being unemployed for a year or more because they're trying to get into one of those large groups where there are very few slots and an incredibly high bar to entry, and they've got a CV which has got 2-3 years experience on it and everyone's looking for 10?
Yeah, definitely. You're completely right. And what I want to do is actually help the ones that want to get not in the 5%, but the ones that want to get in the other 40% of people that are of companies that are in the middle, that they already recognize design as something that they need to grow and invest in. And not in the 5%, because you're right. Like, it's very difficult. There are more aspects to take into consideration when you want to get into that 5%. So I would say that I'm not encouraging people to apply to the 5%. I'm encouraging them to apply to the other 40% of companies who are in the middle. They are waiting for that designer that wants to establish that the design practice within their companies.
Right.
And yeah, and I've been talking to mostly people that are in companies with a low maturity, and but also people that are in companies where they started in a low maturity and they were able to advance to the next level. And once things get established, it's more difficult to change something that you want to evolve. For example, once you have your design process established, then if you want to change something because you want to, you realize that, I mean, everything can be be improved, right? And you want to do that, then it's really difficult to change things as well. So I'm focusing on designers that are eager to establish that design practice in another company, helping them identify the companies that actually have that opportunity open for them.
What do you see as being the skills that people need for the next, let's say, 5 years, in terms of moving out of that first role that you've had and moving into that kind of more mid-weight space, potentially looking at those leadership opportunities?
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that the part about leadership, because that's something that we as designers, with this whole for the next 3 years, I would say we're gonna be explaining a lot of what we do on the job, and that's gonna take a lot of leadership skills. So being able to articulate your design decisions, being able to articulate why design needs to be involved in the strategy of the company. Having business acumen would be great. Being able to identify what's the business model of the company, so you can present your work in a way that impacts the company's bottom line. So that's something that we've been, I think, informally we've been moving into that area. But in the next 3 years, I think that's something that is going to set leaders, just talking about designers in leadership, apart, because one of the things that you can see in the companies who are in the 5% of maturity is that design is in the highest level. It's working with the CEO, it's working with the C-suite, it's working with the VP of product. So in order to do that, you have to grow out of just your craft and start understanding the other parts of the companies. And for that reason, you need to understand what the company does outside of design. So, for example, if it is in manufacturing, if it is in tech, if it is in any kind of company, having a good understanding of the business model is going to allow you to start entering those conversations in leadership.
So being able to look beyond the confines of the screen and the interfaces that you're developing and the experience touch points that you're responsible for, being able to put it into that wider context of what else is happening in the organization you're in.
Yeah, and it depends on the level of leadership too, right? Because you can be the head of the team, of the design team, and that's a leadership role. And in that sense, you might just focus on design and what can design and how design works with engineering or some of the areas. But once you start moving up in the organization and the bigger they are, then the more you need to complement design with other areas. So something to keep in mind too, if you're not looking into like working with a CEO, or you're not looking into moving up in leadership in a company with maybe 5,000 people, then start looking in places that maybe it's a smaller company, and maybe you don't need to get into business as much. And that's what I mean with it. Everyone is different, so not everyone wants to go into a big company, or not everyone wants to go into a smaller company, because then there you do a lot of things at the same time. Some people enjoy that, other people don't. So it depends on the level of leadership that you are targeting, and also the impact that you want to have. Like, this is something that repeats itself every time that I talk to a designer. Like, and I think it has to do because with the fact that we have the contact with the beneficiary, right? The user, the one that we are solving for. I think that once you have that contact with that person and that empathy, you really want to make an impact on their life, like solving their problem. So when you start thinking in that way, with that mindset that I think that almost every designer has, then you realize that the more influence that you have in the company, the more you are able to get to that impact for that person. That's one of my theories that why we want to go into these leadership positions, and especially if you choose a product that you are really passionate about, like an industry that you really want to see thrive for the people that need it.
Well, I was going to say, like, talking about these really sort of emotive points here around impact and wanting to be able to see that you've made a difference to something, whether that's to the end user of a product or to the organization itself. That's something which I feel is a lot harder to do in large enterprises. You've probably got more chance of being able to do that within that the small medium enterprise, so to speak, or even startups, like, because you've got a lot more deeper contact. I'm wondering whether, when you're talking to people that are effectively going through this mentorship experience, how much of exploration you have around personal values, and whether that should come into play with making decisions as the type of employers you're looking at, as well as how you perceive their design maturity. Because I'm sure that one person might look at something like Facebook, for example, and say that it's not really the kind of organization they want. But I'm sure that there's probably a lot of career development opportunities in a space like that.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Where you apply to as a designer, it has everything to do with your values. And I wouldn't just say about in design, like wherever you, as any kind of professional, I believe that if you could find a job that is aligned with your values, you're going to be more fulfilled in your day-to-day job. So that's why I say that everyone is different in this journey of applying for their next UX job, because you might culture is really something really important to look at in a company when you are applying to that company. And the space that you want to improve with design, it's important as well. So one of the factors is the size of the company, yes, and what are you going to learn. But then one of the other factors is once you improve that area, will you be fulfilled in your job once you start making progress? And it's also part of where you are in your design journey. I've talked to people that are just switching from, for example, product design to UX design, or any kind of other profession that they had. As you know, there are many people going into UX with a different set of backgrounds, and there's also people that have 2, 3, 5 years of experience in a company where they weren't able to do as much as they could. So if your objective is to grow as a professional in your craft, I always say, like, you could write down your values, but what you do is how you manifest your value. So you could have a list and you could say, this is all that I value. It's really nice. But then when you make a decision today and tomorrow, those are your real values. And wanting to grow as in your craft for maybe a year in a company that maybe doesn't have the product that you want to improve necessarily, I don't think that's a bad thing. If you're clear that your value for this year is to grow as a professional, because you need that to be able to enter the company that you really want to help advance, the important thing is to be clear about that. Because when you're not, then you apply to Facebook for the reason that you just mentioned, because you want to grow your abilities, but then you apply to all of the other companies, and you end up applying to 15 companies, and the application is not, as I said at the beginning, that it's not the best application because you have just so many hours in the day. So you end up getting nothing. You don't get that job on Facebook, and you don't get that job in that company that you've always wanted to work for.
If we think back to that process then of, like we were saying, you might be in an organization where you've been there only for a couple of years. Maybe it's even your first job from doing that career switch, where this is the first time you've been responsible for this design practice. The other thing that I hear quite a lot from people who are going out and looking for work in that situation is that they are ultimately let down by because they haven't been value driven, they've ended up working in an organization where the processes are quite archaic. They're perhaps dated. They don't work in the way that they know that they would work best in. And so when they're asked to then present their work as part of a portfolio, they don't feel confident in what they have to show. How can you work around that sort of situation?
That's a great question. So you're saying that if you've been in a company where they haven't updated their design practice, then you would, as a designer, you wouldn't have a good portfolio for your next job. All right?
Yeah.
So I got this question yesterday actually, and my response is that that is happening a lot. So that was the first thing that I said to this person. Like, it is not an isolated incident. So it's happening a lot for that reason. There is a lot of low maturity companies, and then you're not able to build your portfolio, and the next company is asking for someone that already has like 2-3 years of experience and can prove it, right? So that's something that, in my opinion, needs to change. And that's one of the reasons why I'm creating a few products under the UX Backstage umbrella, because once the companies realize that they're losing talent because they are not letting this talent enter their companies in the situation that they're at, I mean, they're not going to be able to fill that position because there's not enough experienced designers for the number of of positions open. And one thing that I always say when you are applying is to explain your projects in the context of the design process. So, for example, and I always say, be honest. Don't try to like change your projects to make it look like you did something that you didn't. So it's better to present your projects and say, like, this is a problem that we are trying to solve. This is the assumption that we have. This is where I was able to get to in the project, and this is what the other methods that I would have applied to this project. So it's really good to explain how you would choose one method of it over the other, because that's one of the things that I think that differentiates UX designer. You have I've seen people list all of the methods under the sun of a UX design, but the thing is, the real skill is which ones to use when and for what, right? So that's something that you can show in the interview if you don't have enough experience. You can show how you make that decision, how you craft the problem. And one thing that I always recommend too is to, if you're not allowed to do what you want to do during your job, like create your own projects where you can test everything that we learn in user experience. One of the things that is really important is to be able to be comfortable with the user, and to gather these insights and to be able to identify who has this problem. This is something that you can test on your own as well. And I mean, we are in this weird situation where we need to do these kinds of things, and it's not until we advance a little bit more in these maturities within these companies that we're going to be able to improve this situation. There is one the latest episode in the podcast, the UX Backstage podcast, talks about that as well. Like, a lot of people are learning on the job, and this is the guest that I had, which is a great guest. His name is Christian Rohr, and he teaches user experience strategy in Nielsen Norman. He said that the best companies, the companies that leverage design the best, are going to realize that they need to train people on the job. There's too much demand and not enough people with enough experience to fill this position. So they're gonna have to figure out how to make it work.
We've definitely got a big gap, as you said, in terms of that so many people are career switching. They're ultimately coming in at graduates, but because they're career switching, maybe they're, in their late 20s, early 30s, there's also unfortunately, I sort of feel like a little bit of a delusion of grandeur that they are more capable and proficient than they actually are, because although they've been in work for quite some time, they haven't been doing this work. But that said, most of us actually haven't been doing this work for very long. We keep forgetting that touchscreen interfaces have only appeared within the last decade. And now we've got new interfaces, we've got voice interfaces, we've got things like visual recognition software, augmented realities, all of these new emerging technologies. Nobody has any experience in them. It seems ridiculous to be advertising jobs for it. I mean, it's quite phenomenal to see a few adverts out this week for jobs in the UK that are looking for people with 5 or more years experience building Alexa apps. That's literally impossible. And yet someone's put that ad out. You can kind of infer from that, I guess, of like the maturity level of that organization. But there is a need for us to be a little bit mindful of the fact that we're all learning all the time, right? So what else could we be doing as hiring managers and as sort of like organizational heads to make the process better for us to be able to bring in that new talent and to develop it?
So in terms of hiring managers, one of the things that might bring a better pipeline for them is to be more precise on what they need from the designer in their at least in the job description. There are these generic job descriptions that people are just like copying and pasting, and it doesn't say much about the product or the culture. Like that those two things are the things that we're looking into the most. The culture, because of that this space where we are now, and I think for the next 2 years, where we are explaining within the company what user experience can do for them. It's very important to know what's the culture, so to know what we are going to be working with. A lot of positions are adding already the area of being the champion of UX within the company. Once you see that, you realize that that company is still struggling with presenting the value of user experience. Having a good culture page, of course, not inside of the job description, but many companies have just a page to describe what they value within the company. And also understanding the kind of designer that they need for the product that they have right now. So not try not to be so high level, but say one of the best just job descriptions say like, this is where we are in our product. This is the user that we want to help right now. This is the challenge that we have, as much as they can share, because there's a lot of things that can't be shared outside of the company, but as much as they can share, so the designer knows what they would be hired to solve for.
Looking a little bit more at like what your immediate need is, to be able to put the context of this is ultimately where you're going to start this journey. And we have to get over this point for us to be able to do anything more advanced than this, so that you can make a decision as to whether or not that's what you want to be doing right now, rather than thinking about it in terms of your career length.
Yes. And the reason I say that too is because in order to do that, to include that in your job description or in the opening, you need to do a lot of work prior to that. And what we've seen is that a lot of description is like, okay, we need a UX designer, and then we look up everything that a UX designer can do, and that's a job description.
Right.
And there needs to be more work prior to that. There is a great course that is from Jared Spool that is called I think it's Hiring Masterclass, and that's what he does. He works with companies, and I think he runs workshops, and he does this consultancy only for them to realize exactly what kind of designer they need for that moment, for that product and that service. Like I just wanna make it clear that it's not something easy, but if you do that as a company prior, you're gonna get a much better pipeline of designers. And for us as designer, we're gonna be have a better idea of what we are applying for. So we're going to be able to position our projects in a much better way, and be more excited about the change that we can that we can do when we enter the company. So it's not easy, but at the same time, it's more it works better for the company and for the designer.
You're so right. I think that it's something that's becoming more and more apparent to a lot of people at the moment, that there is a validity in the concept of employer brand and positioning yourself to be attractive to talent, not just to the consumer of your product or your service, right? I think we all probably need a little bit of help with that.
Yes.
That's great. Thank you so much for taking some time out today to talk to us about it. I'm really looking forward to following everything that's going on with UX Backstage over the next couple of months. And if people wanted to find out more about what you're doing and what you have to say on this, where can they go?
So you can go to uxbackstage.com. And there you're going to see everything that we are creating to advance the mission of the project. And if you go to UX Backstage /course, you're going to see the course is still open. I'm still talking to people to see who's a good fit, who I can help with this program. And the program, it starts in November 18th. And let's see the UX podcast as well. We've just released the second episode, and it talks about education, leadership. These are conversations with designers who are in leadership positions in companies. And yeah, if you want to follow in Twitter as well, everything is UX Backstage everywhere.
Thank you for listening to the UX Coach podcast. If you'd like to come and join us, maybe you want to share your experience or talk about something we've previously discussed, I truly mean this when I say it, get in touch at theuxcoach.com. I'll be back in a few weeks with another guest to talk about design and user research careers, the challenges ahead, and advice on personal development. Until then, you can follow us on Twitter at the UX Coach Pod.